Good morning. Welcome to Module 1, Lesson 5. Today we are going to be putting it all together. So we have spent a lot of time looking at the Abigail Adams letter and deconstructing the rhetorical situation in the prompt and deconstructing the rhetorical situation within her letter. And so today you're going to be taking a look at a student essay that addresses the Abigail Adams rhetorical analysis prompt. Before we take a look at that student essay that addresses the Abigail Adams prompt, I want to remind us of the rhetorical situation of the letter, since it's been a little while since we last read it. The exigence of the letter is John Quincy Adams is reluctant about being in France with his father, who is a U.S. diplomat. We see that in the opening of the letter when Abigail Adams keeps referring to her son as reluctant. The purpose is that Abigail Adams, his mother, wants to convince him that it is a valuable experience and that he should be actively engaging in the experience in order to be a better person and a future statesman. The audience, this is a personal letter, so the audience is to John Quincy Adams, Abigail's son. She did not write this letter intending to have it read by a mass amount of people, and yet that is the reality of it because he did go on to become president. And so now we have this as like a historical document. The context of this letter is 1780, so we know that this is right after the Revolutionary War, and Abigail Adams has referenced that her son will be eyewitness of these calamities, and he will be eyewitness to the tyranny and the desolation that has taken place. And so she's using that context throughout the letter as well to bolster her purpose, and this is why you need to take advantage of this opportunity and use this experience to enhance you as a person and a future statesman. The writer is Abigail Adams, his mother, and we could even take that a step further. We know that she is a caring mother. She's writing to encourage her son, and that she is very affectionate toward him. The message of the letter is that this experience, though difficult, will build the character of a hero and a statesman. In our previous lessons, we analyzed the Abigail Adams text by focusing on deepening our analysis by examining the elements of the rhetorical situation. And so some of the questions that we asked ourselves as we were examining the rhetorical situation within the text was, what does the example suggest about the writer's values, beliefs, or needs? So who is the writer and what is the writer's values based off the evidence in the text? Audience, what does this example suggest about the audience's values, beliefs, or needs, about the writer's perception of those values? So how do we see Abigail Adams' perception of her son surfacing in the text? What do we notice are some of their shared beliefs? Exigence, what does this example illuminate about why the text was being written? And again, we know that she's writing him because he is reluctant to go on this journey, so she wants to send encouragement. And then the context, what does this example illuminate about the time in which the text was written? And we can see her kind of referencing the calamity, the tyranny that he has been witness to at home and abroad. And so that illuminates kind of the situation of the Revolutionary War. Purpose, why does this example relate to the writer's purpose, and how does it contribute to the writer's purpose? So is she writing to encourage him? Is she writing to inform him, etc.? And then the last one, message. How does the example relate to the writer's message, and what does this illuminate about the subject? And so we took specific examples and highlighted how they related to the writer, to the audience, to the exigence, etc. We also improved our analysis by considering not only the rhetorical moves, so not only were we thinking about the writer's use of diction and language, but how that use of language relates back to the rhetorical situation. So what does that use of language reveal about the writer or the audience or the purpose? And so notice we took this 5-step guide in strengthening our analysis in a specific paragraph. So it's important that we state the example, and that's where we're using context plus evidence, that you take a sentence or two to explain the example, but then these last 3, which were not addressed in the exemplars, we had to add them ourselves. We really need to focus on analyzing, well, what does this example reveal about the writer and the writer's beliefs or needs, or what does this example reveal about the audience and the writer's perception of her audience? How is she appealing to him? and then describe why it is persuasive. So you wrote 2 body paragraphs last week. You wrote one that acknowledged or that kind of analyzed how Adams reassures her son, and we had 4 different pieces of evidence. Your job was to make sure that you are strengthening that one sentence of analysis, and to do that, you analyzed for a writer, you analyzed for audience, and you analyzed for why it is persuasive. The other body paragraph that you wrote about was the river metaphor. The other body paragraph you wrote about was about comparison, and within that paragraph you touched on the river metaphor, and you touched on the Cicero allusion, where she was comparing her son to Cicero. And so you have taken time to really see what 2 really strong body paragraphs look like, especially in terms of the evidence and commentary row of the rhetorical analysis rubric and the sophistication row of the rhetorical analysis rubric. So before we get started with today's lesson, I would like to give us a chance to pull up our lesson 4 mastery check. And this was the mastery check that you wrote about the author's use of comparison. What I'm going to do right now, this is just a sample that I pulled from a student's mastery check, and we're going to read it out loud together and notice, does the student address all elements of the rhetorical situation? Abigail Adams uses comparison to convey her message to her son. So notice we're starting with this topic sentence. We know that within this paragraph, we're going to be analyzing Adams' use of comparison and how that conveys her message. The topic sentence is a little vague, and so it could be improved. In the 3rd paragraph, she introduces 2 metaphors to compare travelers like her son to a river that, quote, increases its stream the further it flows from its source, and to springs that, quote, improve their qualities as they pass along. So if he travels, he will grow up as a person. The message of both of these is clear. Abigail Adams believes her son should take advantage of the opportunity for personal growth that the experience traveling abroad will bring. Abigail Adams also alludes to Cicero. She reminds her son that Cicero shone as a distinguished orator because he had been roused, kindled, and inflamed by the tyranny of Catiline, Verus, and Mark Antony. She believes that he too can become inspired by facing challenges. Abigail Adams uses metaphor to convey her message that John Quincy Adams should take advantage of the opportunities offered him in France. So you'll notice that the student is stating the example, and the examples are the context and evidence. So the metaphor, when Abigail Adams compares the traveler to a river that increases its stream the further along it flows, we have stated the example. We've taken a little bit of time to explain it, and notice that the writer of this paragraph has tied it back to the message that Abigail Adams believes her son should take advantage of the opportunity for personal growth that the experience traveling abroad will bring. We also see her tie the second comparison to her message again when she says Abigail Adams uses metaphor to convey her message that John Quincy Adams should take advantage of the opportunities offered him in France. Now, this example is adequate. However, it doesn't do enough to touch on, well, what does this reveal about audience and the audience's shared beliefs with the writer, or what does this reveal about the writer's purpose? And so we could do a better job with some of our analysis sentences. So what it does, it identifies the metaphor, it explains the metaphor, and it explains how it applies to her son. What it doesn't do, it doesn't take in the full context. It doesn't address how this metaphor might have appealed to him as an audience member. So why would this specific metaphor be so appealing? So let's take a look at a revised copy of that mastery check. I'm going to read this out loud to you, and you'll notice that I kind of have a guide for where the student is touching on different elements of the rhetorical situation. Abigail Adams uses comparison to convey her message that her son should meet the challenges of traveling abroad and engage in the experience in order to be a better citizen and a statesman. You'll already notice that the topic sentence is much improved. This topic sentence clearly states the message that Abigail Adams wants to convey to her son. So it touches on her son being the audience. It also touches on the exigence, the fact that he's traveling abroad. That is why she's writing this letter. And her overall purpose. She wants him to be a better citizen. She wants him to be a better statesman. And that's why she's conveying this message that he should meet the challenges of traveling abroad. He should fully engage in this experience. In the third paragraph, she introduces two metaphors to compare travelers, like her son, to a river that increases its stream the further it flows from its source, and to springs that improve their qualities as they pass along. The message of both of these is clear. Abigail Adams believes her son should take advantage of the opportunity for personal growth that the experience traveling abroad will bring. As a mother, so notice here we are touching on the writer. So as a mother, she appeals to his sense of guilt here. And this is how she's appealing to him through this metaphor, reminding him of the superior advantages she has given him and that his improvement should reflect those advantages. If, like the river and the stream, travel leads to growth, he should take advantage of that opportunity. In her allusion, Adam reminds her son that Cicero is shown as a distinguished orator because he had been roused, kindled, and inflamed by the tyranny of Catiline, Varus, and Mark Antony. This would surely appeal to her son's sense of patriotism and duty, especially as he is an aspiring diplomat who, like Cicero, was an eyewitness to tyranny who would have been moved by Cicero's plight. She appeals to his common sense as well, explaining that difficult situations like the one faced by Cicero wake into life the character of the hero and the statesman. So facing a challenge like the one he was facing abroad would make him not only a better person, but a better statesman as well. Abigail Adams' use of comparisons effectively conveyed her message that John Quincy Adams should take advantage of the opportunities offered him in France. So you'll notice in this version, the student is taking time to explain how the comparison or the Cicero allusion appeals to the audience. Why is she using this? So it's taking a step further to highlight how it not only reflects, yes, we still have reflects her message and how it helps her prove her message, but how it also is convincing to the son. So what you will notice is that this draft connects to the rhetorical situation. We see many more elements tied in here. It's not just the message and how the metaphors relate to the message, but includes how the writer uses the metaphors to appeal to her audience. Okay, so we just took a look at an example, but I would like for you to have a chance to go ahead and look at your example now. So on today's classwork, you'll notice warm-up part 1. You need to copy and paste your lesson form mastery check into the indicated space on your warm-up. And what I would like for you to do is reread your mastery check out loud. And then I want you to highlight or label where you include different elements of the rhetorical situation. And you've been given a color-coded highlighting tip on your actual class packet. So take time now, pause the video, copy and paste your lesson 4 mastery check into the indicated space on your warm-up, and highlight or label where you included different elements of the rhetorical situation. Welcome back. If you were here, you've already copy and pasted your mastery check into the indicated space, and you've taken some time to think about, well, where do we see elements of the rhetorical situation in your own writing? Where do you reflect on why she's using this comparison and how this comparison appeals to the audience's sense of shared belief or the audience's sense of common sense. And so you should see the highlights indicated on your paragraph. For some, you might notice that, I have really kind of dug into the audience, but I didn't really mention how this helps her support her message. So you might want to highlight message here and tell yourself kind of what do you want to do next time, or what do you want to improve or include? So which of these elements of the rhetorical situation do you need to include or improve? Highlight the elements and explain. Go ahead and pause the video and follow those directions. Okay, so today we're going to look at an actual student example of an essay that was written for the Abigail Adams prompt. What we're going to do is we're going to be thinking about, well, how does this student earn the sophistication point? And if you'll remember, we were really on the last few lessons focusing on how to explain the significance or relevance of the writer's rhetorical choices given the rhetorical situation. So how does this student not only identify the rhetorical moves the author's making, but really deeply understand how they relate back to the rhetorical situation? So what I'd like for you to do is take 3 minutes to reread the prompt and the passage. It has been a while since we've read it, and it just helps to take a little bit of time to reread that before you see the student sample. So go ahead and pause the video, take 3 minutes. I really advise you to read it out loud. You might also notice as you're reading it, you might really understand this a lot differently than you did the first time you read it. So consider what allows you to deeply understand it now. Take 3 minutes, reread the prompt and the passage. All right, welcome back. So you should have reread the prompt and the passage. Today's lesson is looking at a high-scoring sample essay, and we want to identify how the student explains the significance or relevance of the writer's rhetorical choices given the rhetorical situation. We also want to identify how the student writes a more sophisticated analysis of comparison, and we want to identify how the student analyzes the writer's diction and sentence. Your task is to read the student sample out loud. As you read, I would like for you to highlight details that apply to the rhetorical situation. You may use the colors indicated below. Notice that the first half of the essay has been completed for you. Just because that first half of the essay has been completed for you, I really advise you to follow along as I read this and explain how it relates to each. And then you are going to be rereading the rest of the essay out loud and color coding it according to the key at the top for rhetorical situation. In 1780, 8 years before the ratification of the Constitution, so notice the student starts with context here to introduce the piece of writing, and this is in her intro. Abigail Adams wrote to her son, John Quincy Adams, the future president of the United States, while he was traveling overseas with his father. And again, that's the exigence. That's why she is writing. So this student is taking time to summarize kind of the situation here. Who was a U.S. diplomat and at the time before he was elected president. Obviously, this is all context too, so you could have highlighted that as well. Unaware that her son would become president, she writes to convince her son of travel and diligence. Adams employs a concerned maternal tone, historical allusions, qualified flattery, patriotic appeals, and lists to impart the importance of maximizing on natural talent by applying oneself. So the first thing you notice is in this intro paragraph, the student is taking time to summarize the rhetorical situation. We have context of when this letter is being written. We have the writer herself, Abigail Adams, who's writing to her son, John Quincy Adams. And yes, those could be highlighted according to audience and writer. And we have like why she's writing, the exigence. While he was traveling overseas with his father, the thing we could add is we know he's reluctant. So we could add that the future president of the United States, while he was reluctantly traveling overseas with his father, who was a U.S. diplomat at the time before he was elected president. She also includes her purpose. She's writing to convince her son of travel and of diligence. And she includes moments of her, or sorry, she includes elements of the audience. So this is actually incorrectly labeled. Sorry, sometimes there are little mistakes. She is including elements of herself. Adams employs a concerned maternal tone. That is elements of the writer, and we know this reveals more about kind of like how she is feeling as she is writing this specific piece. And she includes the message to impart the importance of maximizing on natural talent by applying oneself. You can word the message differently, but you'll notice that it kind of is the same thing that we've been saying. That overall, she wants him to fully engage with this experience because it will make him a better person and statesman. And so notice both of these are the same message, they're just worded differently. All right, what I would like for you to do is continue reading. You are identifying elements of where the student addresses more of the message, addresses elements of the audience's beliefs, values, or needs, addresses the writer's beliefs, values, or needs, or where we see the writer having a specific perception of the audience's values and appealing to the audience. Exigence, purpose, and context. If you have questions, please feel free to chat or use the chat function in Microsoft Teams, or to just unmute yourself and ask those questions. All right, good luck.